rather than the way that we wish it looked and felt, coming from our own political and presentist perspective. So for all of those reasons, it's really just been a very special thing to have Wlamyra here with us, teaching a class, here to just talk with and have as part of our community. And today's talk, The Polyphony of Black Experiences at the Time of Abolition in Brazil, I'm sure will bring many of these issues that she's worked on so long to the fore. So Wlamyra, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the class for accepting my apply to be here, to be there. Oh, thank you, and please, you have to be so patient because my English is not so good than I want to, but I will try to do my best, believe me. And thank you so much for the so generous presentation. I am so happy to be here. It's a very important experience for me. And I am trying to debate about so important issues that is abolition in Brazil. So it's part of my recent research about the strategies of Black people in Brazil during the time of abolition. I'm trying to analyze the trajectory of three Black men that walking and trying to make deals during the time, the transformation of 19th century in Brazil, the three last decades of 19th century and the first decades of 20th century. And I try to analyze how this group interpret and the action and the interpreted during the time, interpreted the transformation of the life during the so important crisis like the end of slavery in the of the monarchy time. So the first. Oh, thank you. And one article about that. It has just published in the book that Broden and Kayla organized. And now I'm trying to write one other chapter, or begin to write a chapter about the other man, one abolitionist, Manoel Querino. He is not so knowing than Teodoro Sampaio, but he was very important abolitionist and a very important worker during the time of abolition in Brazil. And I'm trying to organize the book, to write a book that I can analyze the trajectory of this man again in the same day. In the same day, it's my obsessions of the day of abolition, and I think it will be, if I could, I think it will be very good if I can analyze how this man lived and interpreted the day that the world in Brazil changed. I will try. I don't know if I will do it, but I will try to do. So. My research is about the Black strategies and at the time of abolition in Bahia, in Brazil, during 1870s, in the beginning of the next year. So I will speak very quickly about the context, because here there are very important historians that don't need to so deeper analyze know about the end of 19th century in Brazil, but the context that I analyze is about the emancipationist process and the international transformation in the Atlantic world. So it is one of the results that I need to understand that in the last time, in the so structural time. And it's very important to be there because for me it's very important to think about the end of slavery in Brazil. In the same time, analyze the end of slavery in the United States, in Cuba, because their transformation were in the same context. And we try to think about it. Two important conceptions that is the citizenship and freedom. I think the idea of citizenship is very important because it's not a universal means about that. And during the time of abolition in Brazil, the conception of citizenship was very different that in the United States. And I think it's a very good goal if I try to know how different conceptions interfere in the change of the Brazilian society in the 19th century. The connection between the end of slavery and the racialization, it's an issue that I analyze in my thesis. But it's not only not only a resource that analyze that, Matos, Brother Fish, Keladinga, a lot of other research is analyzed that in this time. And my start point is to understand the abolition like not only of the economic structure, but one fact that redesign the power and redesign the structure, the racial hierarchical structure in Brazil in the end of the 19th century. It is my start point. It is about one article that I wrote with Matos. It was published recently. And first, I chose image to work with you because I think it's better to explain my idea. And because of I'm trying to sophisticate my point of view, looking for the image. I think it's very important to analyze it more careful and try to interpret it and closing the other kind of search. Like the police report, the governmental report, and then try to analyze the image. So both of that image was published in the time of abolition. Both of them 1 year after the abolition, and I wanted to pay attention about the conceptions of both. This is one official image, was created by the government, the imperial government, like a stamp, and other is one image from one abolitionist newspaper. But both of them create idea that the abolition was a very friendly end of slavery in Brazil. If you note, the males is the same top and it's the same that, but you can note the difference of space, social space in that societies, because both of them without shoes, and the shoes was how do I say it? One way that you can recognize the zebra and the citizenship. And both of them using, I don't know how do I say it, enxada? I forgot.
Like a hoe.
A hoe. And the idea is the workers and the owners in the same plan try to solve the problem in Brazil and stay in the same level. This idea was very important in Brazil at the time of abolition, because the danger, the fear of the war was so close to the transformation in the 19th century. And the Civil War in the United States was one very fear that the elite every time try to escape. And the idea of the same top, the friendly and a so strong time, a so cheaper structure was so common in official stamps, in abolitionist newspaper, and it's not about it's. I think I wanted to know what you think about it, but I intend to analyze that like one way that creates not only one image, but one project, a national project of the post-abolition time. So, although this idea, this image, everybody knows now that were a very important problems in Brazilian society during the abolition and after the abolition, which murder, death, and a lot of a little fight that show us how the transformation wasn't easily changed, what easily end. Although the idea of the friendly, because every time the government and the abolitionists compare with what happened in the United States. It is from the police report. So, in the same time, there was an idea of freedom as an imperial gift. It is one very important scene by Pedro Américo. It's very interesting because it was important exactly in the time that the Republic was declared. So the idea to create the freedom as a gift was very important for the Republic project. And I may try to analyze it so close the idea, then it's so important to transform the idea of abolition. And it's very interesting because you can see that it's very common in imagery about the abolition in Brazil. The black people so grateful, and it's not the princess was there, but it's the representation of the freedom, and a lot of ideas about the Catholic universe, you can see that, and the comprehensions of the place of the race. And it's very interesting because at the same time, when I look at it in the newspaper and sometimes in police report, I can see, for example, a new category that have been invented during the time of abolition, like race emancipated and race, I can say it in English, uma raça emancipadora. Race,
an emancipating race.
Yeah, emancipated race, and someone that's sold that gift the freedom for someone. It is very important to, it is not only one new vocabulary, it is about one idea about racial politics. And then we try to analyze that like one way to understand the project that the elite. And when I'm talking about the elite, I'm not talking about only the imperial elite. I'm talking about the group that assumed the control in the Republic time, in the first years of the Republic time. And that group was, Bahia was a doctor from the medicine university, and they every time organize the ideas, study about the racism, scientific racism. I think it's very important to understand how this project emerged and how this project would be so important in them reorganize the structure of the Brazilian society after the abolition. And preserve, this project preserve the hierarchical race, but don't speak about racism. And it is very important to understand because in the same time, during this transformation in the United States, you can see other dynamic, other trajectory of the change. And I think it's very interesting to analyze the emancipation in the American context. So it's the other image is with the same idea. Isabel, like someone gifted the freedom for the slave, and it's very interesting because it was using the cigarette stem. And one idea to create something very popular, very common in day by day. And so let's go to Bahia. I finished the context. In the first years, 2 years after the Republic, the declaration of the Republic in Bahia, I'm very interested in cultural social history. history social culture social history, okay, you understand. And analyze the carnival festivities in Bahia. And I found in the first years of the carnival in Bahia, a very important group from the elite, organized by the professors and students, and from the medicine school, create one group that is Cruz Vermelha Club, a carnival club. In the first year after the Republican declarations, they imagine, they create a party, use like navigation. They want to celebrate Vasco da Gama. And when I found it, I think, oh my God, it's so strange. Why the one carnival group, after the abolition and after the Republican declaration, want to celebrate the new world, the new time, with European dress, and I think it's not It's very important to understand the idea because it is very symbolic way to tell for the societies what the project, what the reference that this elite imagining to create a new time, to create a new world. Very interesting, and I could laugh a lot because they described the world and they were so proud to be in this clothes, and I imagine during February in Bahia, so hot. This group used this kind of clothes in the streets. I can imagine it was not so comfortable, and but it was very important for me because it is one way that I can analyze. It's one sign that I can analyze the project, the idea about the new world in post-abolition time. And in the same time, oh my God, oh sorry, it's not correct. Sorry, I work. Yeah, in the same time, there are very important abolitionists in Bahia. And they were during the abolitionist movement, and they participate the association with the professors and the students from the medicine school. It's very interesting to imagine one room like that. Then you can see doctors and the abolitionists like Manoel Querino, Ismael Ribeiro, and Domingo Silva. I chose them because they were in a very important, they were in the organization of the Association of Workers in the same time that they were abolitionists. I think it's very interesting because I can see the overlap between the workers' dreams and the trajectory of the black men in the abolitionist movement. It's not a separate thing. It's about one way to create other project, I think, aspect for the society. And during the carnival, I found one group that Manoel Querino participated. He was a leader of one carnival group called Pandas da África. And in the same time that the navigations from the medicine school went to the street and exhibited the idea of civilization from Europe, they participate of the carnival with one allegory that created by the Menelik. Menelik was an emperor of Haiti during the last decade of 19th century. And sometimes I think, oh my God, I want so much to be there to see that. I can use some day of my life to be there and see that, because it's so interesting. If you can imagine it on the street, the group from European and the group from African, and he is Menelik, the one portrait that show Menelik, and that is Martiniano Bonfim. Martiniano Bonfim was one very important leader of the Black community in Bahia. He was candomblé leader, and he was a very important, I can say, informant.
An informer or
Informer to Nina Rodrigues. And it's very interesting to imagine this guy organized one carnival group and talking with the Nina Rodrigues about the carnival ritual, and at the same time talking with the white men from the abolitionist movement. And I think it's like a puzzle for me. It's one way that I have to understand this image. I have to understand so complicated structure that could be possible on the street, in the street. It could be possible in the street, the both groups stay together and at the same time create projects for the post-abolition society, and at the same time it's like a symbolic fight. It is one way that this group creates one image that everything is good, it's abolition without war, but at the same time there are one fight, a symbolic fight. So it is my puzzle. My goal is understand that and organize it in one book. I begin with an article that I wrote and has been published. I'm so grateful for that in the book. And now I have 1 year to write it. And I think it's very interesting. I'm very excited to analyze that, and I want so much to know what you think about my idea, if it's a crazy idea or it's one way to understand the transformation in 19th century. Thank you so much. I'm sorry about my bad English song.
Thank you so much. I think that everyone understood, and I think there are some questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to run to go teach in 2 minutes, but One of the groups that Nino Rodriguez talked about was in the carnival at that moment was the Embaixadas Africanas. Does the Embaixada Africana structure in carnival like a bloco go back further before abolition?
Yes, I found that the notes about the Embaixada Africana in Independence Africa in 1897, 1898, 1899. I think in the first years of 20th century, you can find a little notes. And it's very interesting because in 25, I forget. In the first year of 19th century, the presence of carnival African groups was prohibited in Bahia.
But before abolition, are there embaixadas africanas in the 1870s and 1880s?
Yes.
Question for you.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, I'm fascinated as you are by sort of imagining how all of these different groups with all of their different projects interact with each other, either in a single moment on the street or in general. And I wondered if, thinking about Querino in particular, you could tell us a little bit about what his networks were like. Who did he know? Who did he talk with? How can we kind of see through his life the way that all of these different worlds sort of intersected and clashed?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm trying to construct, to understand the ties, to understand the way this group creates societies. And I have to know about the summer space, social space, like Sociedade Protetora dos Válidos, association, workers association, and Manoel Querino, for example, was how do I say? It's not deputy,
City council.
City council.
Yeah, city councilor, and I didn't have time. I have time to see this documentation, but I think it's very interesting. It's very important to understand the other space that this guy was together, to be together and to see. I will try to see the moment that she's friendly, broken, to understand the way this relationship was so tense, so conflicted, and I need to understand that. I'm trying. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your talk. I have actually lots of questions, but I'll narrow it down in the interest of time. So the first question is, in Marcus Wood's The Horrible Gift of Freedom, I don't recall actually if he has a section on Brazil specifically, but at least in the Anglo and the US canon of abolitionist and emancipatory artwork, there's like this repeating image of the kneeling slave, kneeling grateful slave, and I just noticed from the images you showed that seems to be absent in these kind of Brazilian canonical images of emancipation. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you find distinct about the imagining of freedom as a gift in the Brazilian case. The other thing that struck me is that Princess Isabel is a feminine figure, so that's quite different than Lincoln or many of the other British abolitionists. So if you could talk about that too, about gendered representations of emancipation. And I guess the other question, which is really broad, is abolitionists had a range in politics. Some of them were socialists and envisioned a massive redistribution of land after the end of slavery. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how these symbolic politics in the Bahian case are related. Are they mapping at all onto any broader? Do you find the same people who are sort of dressing as African potentates then being active in other kind of like more, I guess we could say, materialist politics?
Yes, very interesting that. I think the first, the image of Isabel, it's about gender, but it's about the Catholic structure. And sometimes when I look at the image created for her, it's about it's so close than the image of I don't know how to say it in English, Nossa Senhora. A saint.
The saint,
Yeah. And it's one way to put her in the same place in the structure of the Catholicism in Brazil. It's not, I think it's not about the one woman that gives that soul power that can construct the freedom time. It's about one space reserved for this stereotype of the woman in the Catholic structure, the Catholic ideas about the religions. And about socialists, Manoel Querino is very interesting. I'm choosing him because he created a newspaper calling O Trabalho, O Work. And every time he talking about the conditions of the workers' life. And every time he declared that he wants to fight against the elite. I think it's very close. But unfortunately, the project that successful after the abolition was a project so excluded. And when I'm thinking about, for example, the rebels that try to organize the state to distribute land, to construct other kind of society, he was in the height of the scene after the abolition was declared. And I think it's very important to analyze like one continuity of the emancipations construction in Brazilian society. And as the social history now, every time trying to analyze how the emancipations structure, the way that the slave could bring a society without slave became free. The way that the slave became free show us how the freedom was constructed and interpreted in Brazil. And I think the most important contributions of the social history in Brazil now about the abolition issues is to analyze how the emancipations, the very way that the slave became free, construct one society that you can transit between freedom and the slavery, between citizenship and the without rights. Mm-hmm. And it don't create a war. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so deeper and so stable in Brazil. Yesterday, I don't know if everybody knows, the police killed them. More 20 teenagers, and when you see the newspaper, everybody tell about the structure of the state, the marginality, nobody talking about the citizenship. And I think there was about the so deep was the structure of inequality in Brazil. And my goal is understand the Republican structure. And I think if I want to understand that, I need to look back. I need to look into the emancipation, not like legacy, but like structure that the society create the inequality because it's very important to reorganize the power. I will try to contribute to it, and I think the social history is very important at this moment in Brazil, in contemporary Brazil society. Yeah.
I wanted to actually follow up on the question of the images, because I mean we see, I think here we see the tension between two kinds of representations. There is the representation of freedom as gift, right, with the nomadic and the cigarette case, and you will see the kneeling slave there. But here in the first two, you see more emancipation as a chord, right? I guess this deal that was struck between these two parties. And it's interesting that here on the right side you see Revista Ilustrada, this abolitionist magazine, portraying it as such, rather than portraying the chaos of the police reports that you see in those sources. So I'm wondering what that tension represents in terms of these projects that you're talking about, regarding publications like the Revista Ilustrada that were so engaged, but then portray this abolition as a finished process, as this accord, right?
Yeah, and I think it's very integrated for me. Because the Revista Ilustrada was a very important abolitionist newspaper. And it's very interesting because it reinforces the idea that the emancipationist is not about equality, racial equality. It's about to change the system of the work. It's not about to change the structure of the society. And it is very important, the idea, well, it looks like so obvious, but it's very important the idea because a lot of historians every time try to interpret the change of the structure like in a way that the slave and now everybody is in the same level of citizenship because the constitution, the law in Brazil never describe or different level of the citizenship, but I think it's very important to emphasize that. And it is about in one way that this idea could transform the structures and maintain one so important, I can say something that supports
the structure or the
skeleton. Yeah, and it's very interesting because you have to analyze that during the time of a large context, during a long time, during the time of emancipation in the America, and the different ways that the countries in America construct the inequality. And it's about how this elite could manage different groups, different structures to reorganize the world in different ways, but when you look for the United States, Cuba, and Brazil, everybody agreed that the post-abolition was a time with so racialization, so good racialization structures, but in different areas. And I think it's very interesting because it create. I don't want to do comparative history. I think it's not necessary for me to do it. But it's very interesting that the researchers analyze that with an open mind, to analyze different contexts in the American society at the same time. I'm trying to do it.
Okay, thank you. Manoel Querino, he published or edited, right, a book, Arte Culinária da Bahia, which kind of claimed this African heritage in the cuisine, right, of the region. And with this idea of the idea that you were pointing out about the idea of African civilization, I wonder if you could tell us more about what other elements, like the clothing, the food, they imagine as being part of this African heritage, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what do they see as part of this identity or civilization?
Yeah, I think that is very interesting because when the abolition was declared, he tried to become a professional politician. He could be, I forget, not vereador, city council, during four years, but after that, he couldn't. He every time tried and he couldn't. And I think it's very interesting because he found other way to construct the political actions. And he began to write a lot about food, about carnival, about parties, black parties. And for me, it's one way to emphasize this legacy, this heritage, the African heritage. And I analyze that like a political work. And I think it's needed to see in connections with the trends that he created in the black societies. For example, Sociedade de Protetores Unidos, and the Irmandades, religious societies, and he tried to create a very large very hard space that he can walk in and he can communicate with the black communities. And I think it's about politics. It's not the only, and for me it's very interesting because it is one way to think about culture like a political. It's not about expressions, it's not about identity, it's about the way the groups or individuals construct shape has their performance in the society.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I had a question, similar to Tomás's about the three abolitionists from Bahia, and if you could talk more about the other two, about especially because I noticed that they were all born in the 1850s, but they died almost in the same year, right, 1923, 24. So this first 2 decades of the 20th century, how did their trajectory continue, and also I was curious about, found fascinating all these images and regional variations in the representation of emancipation. In other parts of Brazil. I don't know if you have been working on this.
Manoel Querino living until 20. I think it's 40. Yeah, 43, eu acho. I think. And he every time after the time of abolition, he began to create societies and the newspaper College do Trabalho. And I think it's very interesting when you look at this guy, because the trajectory changed the space that they had during the abolitionist movement closing after the abolition. It's very interesting. For example, Teodoro Sampaio, that I wrote in the article, after the abolition, he was a very important engineer in São Paulo, became a very important reference for the United States engineer in Brazil. And after the abolition, he had to come back to Bahia and began to work at that. But it's not the same possibilities that he had in São Paulo. And when I look at that, I can see how the abolition, it's ironic, but the abolition closed the space that this guy can talking, can appear, can construct uma prestigious image. And it is very interesting because I think talking about it for everybody, I need to introduce the issues to explain about this because it's one ironic conclusions. The abolition closed the space for the black people, the black leader in Brazil. It's horrible, but I think it's very important to look at the trajectory that this guy beginning during the abolitionist movement and throughout the end of 19th century and the first decade of 20th century. To understand that, how they try to create a space, a political space, a public space. And it's very interesting to analyze how the society reorganize the space of the black leaders after the abolition. It's very different that happened in the United States.
Quick note. First of all, thank you so much for the lecture and very deep and beautiful things that you're showing in your research. I remember reading 2008, 2009, the Minha Formação by Joaquim Nabuco, and one of the sentences that really struck me was when he was saying that he went to the United States as an ambassador of Brazil, and the U.S. So he delivered a rose to Nabucco and said, "Oh, this is to celebrate you guys because you got abolition in a peaceful way, and we did a civil war." So that's how they like to portray, and he made a point to make that on his book of these two differences. And another thing, like in Pedro Américo painting, I'd like to suggest, like, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm mistaken where you pointed, but in Pedro Américo painting, that woman figure, actually that's Athena, right?
Oh.
Yeah, so she's like the god of wisdom and justice. That's why she's protecting the slaves, and the freedom would be on the top and the middle, and then she's protecting from the demon, which would be
okay, great, thank you. I need to understand more that because it's evil.
Yeah, this would be like there are some because this is like a cornucopia of new classicism, but so this would be like the Pandora box, which opened so that's the box in the middle, which opens slavery, and then Athena would be like the protector, since she's, and then like reason would be in one side of Princess Isabel, and the other side would be like the ideals of French Republic, like liberty, etc. Even the colors are there. So it's just like a huge cornucopia that he's trying to pretend.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I need to analyze that. I need to sophisticate my view to understand every elements in that, and I need to analyze that the other famous portrait by Benjamin.
Yeah, so he loves allegory. So like then he puts in the middle, on the top of the top, he puts like the Catholic, as you said, like she represents Catholicism, right? Like the cross is up there. But I noticed with Athena, not only but the hair, but she has the aegis, which is her sword.
Oh,
But the color aspect is also really interesting with the fallen angel having oddly the same skin color as the
Yes.
slaves, right?
thank you so much.
No,
I
thank you.
will sophisticate. I need to sophisticate every time I look at, but I need to read more about how the social history can read the image. It's very hard for us, and but I think it's very important because this is about the population. It's very interesting, this image, just in the year of the Republic Declaration.
Especially because Pedro Américo is like our figure in Brazil, like right for this conformist view, like how to make this transition, and it always has the symbolism. And especially because the Republic Museum is finally opening now in an election season, and his paintings are going to be forefront.
Yeah.
Do you have, Wlamyra, any analysis of the patterns where Black people are clothed and not clothed? Because it's so striking. It's almost like Harry Potter and Dummy the Sock, right? They're never allowed to have clothing in those later paintings, but in these ones, there actually seems to be some care. They're not wearing shoes, but they seem to be.
Yeah. But it's very interesting because it's about it look like senzalas,
Right.
and it's in the first year after the abolitions, and it is one interpretations of the benevolence of the slaves, and I think it is one way to create a category group, to create a stereotypal group, like called the emancipated race, because everybody knows when the abolition was declared, black population number of black population was freed. And I think it's not only about the work, but it's about the space in the society. And it's very interesting because the Angelo Agostini lived in Rio de Janeiro in the cities. Why he tried to represent the abolition, to celebrate the abolition within an image in the countryside.
Although that could easily have been in the outskirts of Rio, actually. I don't know where geographically that is, but there was plenty within the municipality of Rio. There would have been many places that.
Oh yeah.
That's the sea, right, in the back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Would it be too much to ask if you can read to us what is written below? I just can see like Data Gloriosa, and I can't see.
Oh, sorry. I don't know how to translate it. I will speak in Portuguese, José, please. Data gloriosa ao teu influxo, uma grande nacionalidade que até então se compunha de senhores e escravos. Fraternizou como um povo de irmãos. Levantou-se hosanas à liberdade, igualdade e fraternidade. Salve 13 de maio. Please someone translate for. It's very interesting because you use the liberty, freedom, and equality, and it's one way to prepare the societies for the change of the economic time. And I think it's one signal, very interesting. It's one symbolic interpretation by Angelo Agostini, a very important abolitionist. It's not only about the government, the imperial family, but it's about the idea from the abolitionists, that group of abolitionists contributing for the future in the Brazilian society.
And brothers can all be wearing clothes, but when it's given as a gift, they have to be naked and supplicant.
Yeah, yeah. And these conceptions is very important because discuss the book by maybe what's the name?
Mark Kurtzman.
No, Mark Kurtzman. I forget. It's, no. Muito bem, gostou.
Oh, Nidell.
Jeffrey Nidell. Jeffrey Nidell. And he emphasized every time how the abolition was without the war in Brazil, and every time try to analyze the abolitions and show the black abolitionists, but I disagree with the interpretations, and I think it's very important to analyze different types of socials. I am trying to understand the images.
Could you talk a little bit more about these figures, Manoel, Ismael, and Domingo's engagement with ideas of race, like how they self-conceptualize. We talked a little bit in private about these different terms, right? Men of color, black. There's of course the African kind of the African lineage construction there that you see in the carnival, but how exactly were they placing themselves at this time?
I have he didn't wrote about the abolition, the day of abolition, but he wrote, Manoel Querino wrote a lot about the African custom in Brazil, and he wrote about the festivities, the black parties, and he wrote in newspaper. And I remember a very interesting article that he said, now the constitution of the society, the equality is became. And it is very important because the abolitionists like Manoel Querino, Domingo Silva, Ismael Ribeiro, saw the abolition like a first step for the transformation of society. It's not the end of human process, it's the beginning of human process. And it's very, very important to understand the different different space that the abolitionists had in this movement. And when he tried to convince the public about that, he talked about the school, the education, the structures, every time. And he participated of the school for the black people during all time of the whole time of the abolitionist movement in the first decade of the 20th century. And it's very interesting how these abolitionists recognize the education like first step for the transformation to conclude the abolition's time. It is interesting because it provokes us to analyze the abolition not at the end of the 19th century, but in the middle of one process, one step of one important process. It's not about the conclusions of the slavery in Brazil, but it's about the debate about citizenship, the black citizenship in Brazil. And it's very interesting because every time in the school, for example, in Brazil, the abolition was one topic about the end of the slave work, and after that there are the modernity, the civilization time, the immigrants, and the everything change. It's very dangerous strategy to forget how this past is so important, so still important now. And I think the idea about education is a very good point that show us how this group of Black abolitionists analyze the change like one step to transformation the other.
Yeah, annoyed with just one more.
Yes.
So I was kind of annoyed by this red scarf because it seems just juxtaposed over the code. It doesn't seem like even well drawn in comparison with other things. And then, because I remember that in Bahia, but this is Rio de Janeiro, right?
Yes.
I remember that in Bahia, some abolitionists like Sérgio Cardoso, they were known for wearing red scarves in their thing. I would like to know if you know that Sérgio Cardoso, that's just like a juxtaposition with like important abolitionist figures.
Yes, I have to discover who painted that, but I don't know if I could. Lilia Schwartz analyzed this stamp, Lilia Schwartz.
Yeah.
But I don't remember if she discovered who painted that, because it's very important to understand and I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with it. You'll never see that ever.
On the beach.
On the beach.
It does not exist.
Exactly. That bromelia also, it's not gonna be there. Not that. So yeah, but the scarf is just like completely out of doesn't even has anything to do with.
I'm so sorry. I don't see a scarf.
In the
The
pocket.
red,
Yeah.
I can't see the image clearly enough to actually be able to.
Oh, it's in the pocket. Okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't follow even the laws of physics because it's just like so it was clearly put there for some reason.
Maybe yours made a mistake and just didn't do it.
Oh yeah, like a thumb.
But it's interesting that the same height.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh yeah, that is true. That is true.
yeah. But with different.
Yeah. It's like we're equals in size, but then he puts different clothing and everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Oh yeah, he's shorter. Oh, the other one is tiptoeing, so.
I think it's looked like a Brazilian society.
Isn't it?
I forget everything that I
Is that?
said, but it is Brazil. Sorry. It's enough. I don't need to explain more.
Well, Agora sim, we should thank you because that was a really good talk, and I hope that there's still time for this conversation to continue over the next while. So.
Yeah. Thank you.